Her husband thought she was going for her usual Tuesday coffee. He didn't know she'd started stopping at my register first. I worked the counter at Hillside Hardware, the kind of place people forget exists until something breaks. Mostly I sell washers and paint samples to men who grunt instead of talking. Then Margaret started coming in. She'd ask questions she clearly already knew the answers to. What's the difference between interior and exterior caulk? Stalling. I knew she was stalling. I let her stall. She had this way of tucking her hair behind her ear right before she said something she didn't mean to say out loud, like the day she told me her husband hadn't looked at her, really looked, in longer than she wanted to admit. Then she laughed, embarrassed, like she'd handed me something she couldn't take back. "Forget I said that," she said. "Already did," I said. Line number 1. Rain started while she was still at the counter that day. Neither of us moved toward the door. She had her keys in her hand, had them the whole time, actually, gripping them like an anchor she wasn't using, and I found a reason to restock the shelf nearest her instead of the one that actually needed it. "You always this bad at inventory?" she asked. "Only when it's raining," I said, which didn't mean anything, and she knew it didn't mean anything, and she smiled anyway like I'd said something true. She left without buying the caulk. I still think about that. Not her. Just the caulk. Sitting there on the counter where she left it, like she meant to come back for it. She came back for the caulk 3 days later, except we both knew that wasn't why she came. "I was in the neighborhood," she said, which wasn't true either. Hillside isn't near anything. It's the kind of store you drive to on purpose. I was reorganizing the fastener bins, mostly so my hands would have something to do besides notice her. She looked tired that day, tired in a way makeup doesn't fully cover. A kind of tired that lives underneath the face instead of on top of it. She kept turning her wedding ring like she was checking it was still there. "You okay?" I asked, and immediately felt stupid for asking, like I'd stepped somewhere I hadn't been invited. "I'm fine." Too fast. The kind of fine that isn't. I didn't push. I've learned that much, at least, that people tell you things on their own schedule, not yours. So I just kept working, and after a minute she started talking anyway, about nothing, about the garden she was trying to save from some blight, and I listened to her hands more than her words. She talks with her hands, small precise gestures, like she's still deciding what she's allowed to say. Then she stopped mid-sentence. Just stopped. "Sorry," she said. "I don't know why I'm telling you this. I don't mind." She looked at me then, really looked, the way she hadn't the first time. And something in her face shifted. Some door easing open a crack before she caught herself, and shut it again. "You're a good listener," she said quietly. "That's a dangerous thing to be." She didn't explain what she meant. She didn't have to. The storm knocked the power out around 7, and she was still there. She'd come by right before closing, no excuse this time, not even a fake one about caulk. We sat behind the counter with a flashlight between us like a campfire. She'd taken her cardigan off at some point, and it sat folded over her knee, and I noticed the way her collarbone caught the flashlight's edge, and I made myself notice the flashlight instead. "Do you ever feel like you're waiting for something," she said, "and you don't know what it is until it almost happens?" "Yeah," I said. "Lately." She looked at me for a second too long. I looked back for a second too long. Neither of us moved, but something in the space between us tightened, like a rope pulled taut without either hand letting go. Her phone buzzed on the counter. "Tom." She stared at it like it was a word in a language she used to speak fluently and had started forgetting. She didn't answer it. "You should probably," I started. "I know," she said, and didn't move. The rain got louder against the windows. Her hand was close to mine on the counter, close enough that I could feel the warmth of it without touching it, and for one long stretch of nothing happening, I thought, if I move my hand an inch, if she doesn't move hers away. The phone buzzed again. She pulled her hand back to answer it, said, "Hey, sorry, lost track of time," in a voice that belonged to a different version of her, one I hadn't met yet. Then she gathered her cardigan and her keys, and at the door she paused, like there was a sentence stuck behind her teeth. She didn't say it. She just looked at me and left it there. She didn't come in for 11 days. I counted, which told me something about myself I wasn't ready to look at directly. When she finally did, it was late, past closing, and she knocked on the glass instead of using the door, like she needed the barrier a little longer before she stepped through it. I let her in without asking why she'd stayed away, because I already understood. She'd been trying to stop this from wherever it hadn't officially started. "I need to say something," she said, "and I need you to just let me say it without making it easier." I didn't answer. I'd learned that much too. "I don't know what this is," she said, gesturing between us with a hand that wasn't quite steady. "I keep telling myself it's nothing, that I'm just lonely and you're just kind. But I drove past this store twice tonight before I made myself stop the car." "Okay," I said. "Not because it was okay. Because I didn't have anything truer." "I have a husband," she said, like I might have forgotten, like she needed to hear herself say it out loud to remember it was true. "I have a whole life." When she did come back, it was a Tuesday, ordinary, no storm, no excuse about caulk. She just walked in and stood on the other side of the counter like she had that very first day, except everything about how she stood there was different now, looser, like she'd set something down she'd been carrying too long. "I'm not asking you to wait for anything," she said. "I don't even know what I'm asking." "You don't have to ask," I said. "I'm just here." She came around the counter then. First time she'd ever done that, and didn't kiss me, didn't say anything else. She just leaned her forehead against my shoulder and stood there, breathing, like she was finally letting her whole weight rest somewhere. I put my hand against the back of her head, careful, like she might change her mind if I moved too fast. Neither of us said it was love. We didn't need to. We just stayed like that, the store quiet around us, the caulk still sitting on the shelf where she'd left it the first time. Proof, now, that some things really do wait to be come back for. People ask me sometimes if I regret it, falling for a woman 20 years older, a married woman, all the mess that word carries even after the marriage was already over in every way that mattered before I showed up. I never know how to answer that honestly in one sentence, so I usually just tell them about the caulk. It's still in a drawer somewhere in the apartment we share now. She kept it. Wouldn't tell me why for the longest time, until one night she finally said it was because it reminded her of the version of herself who almost didn't come back for anything, who almost let the whole thing stay a stalled car in the rain instead of a life. I'm not the same person who reorganized fastener bins just to have somewhere to put my hands. I don't perform composure the way I used to. Don't mistake silence for safety. She taught me that staying quiet isn't the same as staying careful. Sometimes it's just another way of leaving. And she's different too. Lighter in rooms she used to hold her breath in. She laughs now like she's not waiting for someone to tell her to stop. Neither of us set out for this. It found us in the space between small talk and honesty, in a hardware store that still smells like sawdust and rain. I don't think love like this is something you plan for. I think you just leave a door open a crack, without meaning to, and hope the right person notices it's not quite shut. She noticed. That was enough. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?